You're making more money today than you were 3 years ago, but you check your bank account and can't quite figure out where it all went. You feel like you're running in place, earning, spending, never really getting ahead. This isn't a lack of discipline. It's an invisible mechanism that Napoleon Hill documented through over 500 interviews with millionaires. Hill spent 17 years tracking the difference between those who build wealth and those who merely move it around. He found it wasn't about how much they earned. It was about 5 microscopic behaviors, invisible to those performing them, obvious to outside observers. These 5 habits operate on autopilot, and each one costs 23% of your annual accumulation potential. Between 1908 and 1937, Napoleon Hill interviewed 507 individuals who had amassed fortunes. They didn't inherit them, they built them. The objective was straightforward: to uncover what truly separated those who became wealthy from those who simply worked hard. What he discovered wasn't exceptional talent, it wasn't luck, it was a pattern. Microscopic behaviors repeated thousands of times, so subtle that those performing them never realized they were the differentiating factor. And as Hill categorized these patterns, something unsettling emerged. The habits that prevented wealth were just as invisible as those that built it. The difference is that no one teaches them, no one names them, and because of this, 9 out of 10 people enact them for decades without realizing they are operating. This video isn't theory, it's a diagnosis. 5 specific signs that Hill documented as silent financial self-sabotage. If you recognize 3 or more operating in your life right now, the problem isn't how much you earn, it's what your mind does with the idea of wealth before any money even appears. And there is a solution, but only after you see the mechanism at work. The problem isn't what you do with money once it comes in, it's what you do with the idea of wealth before any cash even appears. Hill called this reversed applied faith. Applied faith is when the mind directs creative energy to build something that doesn't yet exist. You see the house before the brick. You see the business before the contract. You see the full bank account before the deposit. And you act as if it's already real. Because for the subconscious mind, it is. This isn't empty visualization. It's neurochemical programming. When you sustain a mental image with repeated emotional conviction, the brain treats it as a priority goal. It redirects attention, recognizes opportunities, adjusts automatic decisions. Hill documented this mechanism in all 507 cases, without exception. But applied faith has a shadow, and this shadow destroys more wealth than any economic crisis. Reversed applied faith is when the mind directs creative energy to sustain scarcity. You don't visualize abundance, you visualize lack. You don't imagine the account growing, you imagine the account emptying. And you act, without realizing it, as if that's inevitable. The problem is, this type of faith works with the same efficiency as faith directed toward wealth. Because the subconscious doesn't judge, it executes. If you mentally feed the scenario of "it will never be enough," your mind organizes decisions to confirm that scenario. You spend before you save. You postpone investing. You validate every impulsive purchase with emotional logic that seems rational at the moment. Hill recorded something disturbing. The average person spends more time mentally reviewing what they don't have than planning what they will build. And that's not pessimism, it's active programming. You're using faith, just directed the wrong way. Andrew Carnegie told Hill in 1916, "The human mind is the only machine that can be programmed to build or destroy with the same precision. The difference isn't in the capacity, it's in the target." And these 5 habits you're about to identify are symptoms of this reversal. They don't cause the problem, they reveal that the problem is already operating. And as long as they operate uninterrupted, you can double your income and the end result won't change, because the money that comes in meets a mind programmed to move it, not to retain it. And movement without retention isn't wealth. It's flow. You're the pipe, not the reservoir. Hill spent 3 years just studying this phenomenon. He called it the paradox of increasing income. People who doubled their salary but maintained the same balance 6 months later. It wasn't incompetence. It was an invisible mechanism operating on autopilot. And what Hill discovered was surgical. These 5 habits appear in a sequence. You don't wake up one day with all 5 installed. They build upon each other. One validates the next. And when you recognize 3 or more, it means the reversal is already consolidated. The good news, and Hill repeated this in every interview he gave after 1937, is that these habits aren't character, they are programming, and programming can be rewritten, not with motivation, with method. But before you rewrite, you need to see the code running, and that's what the 5 signs do. They make visible what has always operated invisibly. Now let's get to the first one, and I guarantee, if you're honest with yourself, you'll recognize at least one operating in the last 72 hours. What you just heard completely changes how we understand financial self-sabotage. And there's one detail Hill always emphasized. You become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. That's why I built Rich Mind, a free community to bring together those who take these principles seriously. Inside, you'll find the 17 principles, daily verses, a 21-day planner to rewire your mind, and a vibrant community where people from all over the world exchange ideas every single day. The link is in the pinned comment. Join today, because those who wait for the perfect moment never start. First sign. Validation spending after an achievement. You get a bonus, you close a project, you receive an extra inflow of cash, and within the next 72 hours, you spend a disproportionate percentage of that inflow on something you deserve. This isn't about allowing yourself a reward, it's about the pattern. Financial gain triggers immediate compensatory spending. Hill recorded this as the principle of neutralization. The mind treats unexpected wealth as an excess to be eliminated, not a foundation to be consolidated. Robert Callahan was 28 years old when he discovered Think and Grow Rich in 1939. He worked as an accountant in Chicago. He had a fixed salary of $140 a month. He lived frugally, but managed. In March of that year, he received a bonus of $200, almost 2 months' salary. In the following 3 days, he bought a new suit, took his wife out for an expensive dinner twice, and replaced his old radio with an imported model. When he tallied it up, he had spent $173, 27 remained. Callahan wasn't impulsive. He was methodical, but the pattern operated without him realizing it. Extra gain triggered a mental permission to spend. He deserved it, and his mind turned deserving into a mandate. Hill called Callahan 6 months later to interview him about applying the principles. When asked about the bonus, Callahan couldn't remember how much was left. He only remembered the suit. This is the sign operating. The emotional memory of the spending is stronger than the awareness of what remained. Because the spending delivered immediate reward, saving delivers nothing but a number in an account, and the human brain didn't evolve to value numbers, it evolved to value sensation. The suit delivered sensation, the savings account did not. Say this out loud. Financial gain without a plan turns into spending permission, not foundation building. Second sign, financial anesthesia. Avoiding visualizing the total number. You avoid opening your banking app without an urgent reason. You postpone adding up your total debt. You don't project the accumulated result over 6 months if you maintain your current pattern. It seems harmless. It's emotional self-preservation. But Hill documented something disturbing. Millionaires do the opposite. They face raw numbers weekly. not because they enjoy it, because they know you can't fix what you don't measure. Thomas Edison had a habit of reviewing his personal expenses every Friday afternoon. He didn't delegate, he tallied them himself. Hill asked him why in an interview in 1931. Edison replied, "Because the mind avoids short-term pain, and with it, it also avoids course correction." This is the mechanism. When you don't look at the real number, the mind estimates, and an estimate always rounds down. You think you owe 4,000. In reality, you owe 6,300. You think you have 2,000 in your account. In reality, you have 1,400. And this difference between estimate and reality creates a bubble of false comfort. You operate as if you have a margin that doesn't exist. And when reality hits, a late bill, an overdrawn limit, an emergency without savings, you call it bad luck. It's not bad luck, it's anesthesia. Hill named this the principle of willful blindness. The mind shuts off the pain, and with it, it shuts off the solution. This sign doesn't appear alone. It adds to the first, because validation spending creates emotional debt with comfort, and financial anesthesia prevents you from seeing the real cost of that comfort. Together, these two habits form the first stage of financial self-sabotage. And if you recognized both operating now, it means the next sign is already forming. Say this out loud. Avoiding the real number doesn't eliminate the problem. It only postpones the awareness of it. Now let's move on to the third sign. And this is what separates those in the initial stage from those who have consolidated the pattern of self-sabotage for years. Do any of those two signs resonate with you, operating in your own life? If so, you're precisely at the point where reprogramming begins. The Mental Reprogramming Planner is the 21-day system I personally use to eliminate these invisible patterns. It's grounded in neuroscience and the principles of Napoleon Hill. This isn't just a book, it's a surgical intervention. You'll find the link in the pinned comment of this video. Now let's move on to the third sign, the most devastating of them all. Third sign, recurring emergency debt. You turn to credit for expenses that happen every year, vehicle tax, school tuition, an annual service bill, and you call it an emergency. A real emergency is unpredictable. You don't see it coming. It has no date. It has no fixed value. An annual bill is on the calendar. It comes every year, in the same month, with a known amount. Calling this an emergency isn't a vocabulary mistake. It's a sign that your planning is upside down. Hill called this inverted planning. The mind organizes the present based on a future solution, available credit, not on prior preparation, a built-up reserve. And the problem isn't using credit. It's using credit for what should have been anticipated. Charles Schwab, one of the wealthiest men interviewed by Hill, had an absolute rule. Credit is a tool for leverage, not for survival. If you need it to pay a recurring bill, you don't have a cash flow problem. You have a planning problem. In 1923, Schwab documented for Hill the case of an executive at his company. High salary, $500 monthly, 5 times the national average. But every January, he asked for an advance. Every January, the same story. Year-end expenses, kids' school. I didn't expect it. Schwab called the man in and asked, "How many Januaries have you lived through so far?" The executive didn't understand. Schwab continued, "January comes every year. If you didn't expect it, it's because you chose not to plan, and a repeated choice is a habit." The executive was offended. He resigned 3 months later. Schwab told Hill he preferred to change jobs rather than change habits. That's how self-sabotage protects itself. It makes you avoid anyone who points out the pattern. This is the mechanism. When recurring debt becomes the norm, the mind stops classifying it as a problem. It becomes a way of life, and every way of life creates an identity. You start to see yourself as someone who lives on the edge, and identity protects behavior, because changing behavior requires changing who you believe yourself to be. When this pattern repeats for 2 consecutive years, Hill said, "You're no longer managing money, you're managing debt." And the difference is that managing money builds a foundation. Managing debt builds a cycle. This is the sign of an advanced stage. If you recognized it operating, it means the first 2 have been consolidated long enough to create a structure. Now let's move on to the 4th sign, and this validates the previous 3. 4th sign, constant financial comparison with others. You measure your financial well-being by comparing what you consume with what people around you consume. If they get a new car, you feel pressure. If they travel, you feel like you're falling behind. It's not envy. It's using an external yardstick for an internal decision. Hill called this outsourced faith. When the definition of prosperity comes from outside, not from your own defined plan. And the problem isn't that you want what others have. The problem is that you redefine success based on others' consumption patterns. In 1919, Andrew Carnegie told Hill something he repeated until the end of his life. Wealth built by comparison isn't wealth, it's a race. And in a race you never arrive, because the finish line moves with others' consumption patterns. Hill recorded the case of a New York lawyer in 1934, an annual income of $8,000, in the top 5% of the country's wealthiest. He lived in debt. When Hill asked why, he replied, "My colleagues dine at expensive restaurants. If I don't go, it looks like I'm doing poorly financially." Hill asked, "And are you doing poorly financially?" The lawyer was silent. Then he said, "I am, but no one knows." This is the deadliest of the 5 mechanisms. You destroy the real foundation to maintain the external image. And when the foundation collapses, the image holds nothing. This habit destroys wealth because it transforms accumulation into performance. And performance requires an audience. You stop building for yourself. You start building to be seen building. Say this out loud. Wealth built by comparison isn't wealth. It's an endless race. If you recognize this 4th sign, it means the previous 3 have already consolidated the pattern. And now let's move on to the 5th, the deadliest of all. What Hill considered the final symptom of inverted applied faith. How many of these 4 signs did you recognize at work in your life right now? 1, 2, all 4? Let me know the number in the comments. No judgment, no shame, because recognizing it is the first step. And anyone brave enough to look inward is already ahead of 90% of people. Now let's move on to the 5th sign, the hardest one to spot because it masquerades as caution. 5th sign, postponing investment decisions until you have extra money. You say, "I'll start investing when I have some money left over." This is the habit Hill considered most lethal, not because it's the worst in isolation, but because it seems logical. And logic that validates self-sabotage is the most dangerous because you defend it, but the logic is inverted. Money doesn't just appear as extra. It's set aside first. What's left over after all the bills is spent, always has been, always will be. Because the mind expands spending to the limit of available income. It's not a moral failing, it's a mechanism. Hill documented this in all 507 cases. Every millionaire he interviewed operated with what he called the principle of prior separation. Wealth is built with what comes out first, not with what remains afterward. John Rockefeller had an absolute rule since he was 19 years old. 10% of all income went directly into a separate account before paying any expenses. No matter the amount, no matter the urgency. 10% came out first. Hill asked in 1928, "What if you needed that money for an emergency?" Rockefeller replied, "Then I had 10% less to spend, but the 10th was never an emergency. The emergency was what I did with the 90%. This inversion of logic is what separates those who build wealth from those who manage a paycheck. The error isn't waiting for money to be left over. The error is believing it will be left over. Because as long as you operate on the logic of investing what's left over, nothing will be left over. The mind cannot plan with what doesn't exist. It plans with what is available. And if 100% is available, 100% will be allocated. This isn't a lack of control. It's the standard functioning of the human brain. You don't fight this with willpower. You redesign the system. And the redesign starts with prior separation. It doesn't have to be 10%. It can be 5. It can be 3. The percentage doesn't matter at the beginning. What matters is the sequence. Separate first. Spend later. This 5th sign closes the loop. And if you recognized it operating, it means the previous 4 have already built the perfect environment for it to thrive. Now comes the question Hill asked in all follow-up interviews. How many signs did you recognize? If you identified one isolated sign, it's a pinpoint correction. You adjust, monitor, proceed. If you identified 2, it's a pattern forming, not yet consolidated, but it's building structure. Intervention now prevents it from becoming an automatic mechanism. If you identified 3 or more, and this includes 7 out of 10 people who watch this video, it means the problem isn't financial. It's a mental configuration issue. Inverted applied faith is already operating. You are using creative energy to sustain scarcity, not abundance. And as long as this configuration is active, doubling your income changes nothing. Because the money that comes in meets a mind programmed to move it, not to retain it. But here's the good news. And Hill repeated this in all the follow-ups he did. These 5 habits are not character traits. They are programming. And programming can be rewritten, not with motivation, not with abstract discipline, with method, with intentional physical interruption, with system redesign. The question now isn't if you have the problem. It's whether you will interrupt the mechanism or let it run for another 6 months, because 6 months of inverted applied faith operating on autopilot builds debt that takes 2 years to undo. Not because the amount is unpayable, but because the habit has already become an identity, and identity resists change. It defends itself. It creates logic to validate the pattern. It turns correction into an attack. But you don't have to change your identity all at once. You just need to interrupt one habit, and the entire system begins to crack. Now comes the next step, and this one is executable within 72 hours. Grab a piece of paper now. Write down the 5 signs. Mark how many you recognized operating in your life over the last 3 months. Now choose one, just one, and decide on its physical interruption within the next 72 hours. If it was sign 1, validation spending, separate 40% of any extra income before touching the rest. Transfer it to a separate account. Don't invest yet. Just separate. If it was sign 2, financial anesthesia, open your banking app now and sum the real number. Don't project. Don't plan yet. Just see. Write the number on a piece of paper. Keep it visible. If it was sign 3, recurring debt, open your calendar and mark all annual expenses for the next 12 months. Divide the total by 12. That's the monthly amount you should be setting aside. Schedule an automatic transfer of that amount to a separate account. If it was sign 4, external comparison, uninstall one social media app for 7 days, just one. The one that triggers the most comparison. And observe how many purchasing decisions you don't make. If it was sign 5, postponing investment, schedule an automatic transfer of 10% of your next income to a separate account before the payment comes in. Don't wait for it to be left over. Separate it first. It doesn't have to be perfect. It needs to be done. The interruption of an invisible habit begins with an intentional physical act. And when the mind realizes you acted, not just thought, the entire system recalibrates. Say this out loud. A mental decision without physical action is a letter that was never sent. These 5 habits silently destroy wealth. But there's a 6th mechanism that Hill documented and never published in Think and Grow Rich. It appears in letters exchanged with Andrew Carnegie between 1914 and 1919. Carnegie called it the true intent test. 3 questions that reveal whether your mind genuinely desires wealth or merely the sensation of pursuing it. Hill applied this test to 83 individuals who claimed to be doing everything right, but saw no results. 79 failed, and when he revealed their answers, 17 asked to stop the interview, because the truth that emerged was too surgically precise. In the next video, I'll show you these 3 questions, and I'll challenge you to answer them aloud, because if you fail, at least you'll know why the last 3 years haven't changed anything. And understanding the mechanism is the first step to destroying it. These 5 habits don't destroy wealth all at once. They chip away at it, little by little, month after month, without fanfare, without crisis, without a visible collapse. And that's precisely what makes them lethal. Because you don't notice the damage until you look back and see 5 years that could have built a foundation, and instead built movement. Movement isn't wealth, it's an illusion of progress. You earn more, you spend more. The bottom line stays the same, and by the time you realize it, half a decade has passed, operating on the autopilot of self-sabotage. But now you know, and knowing changes the game. Because these 5 signs aren't a sentence, they are a diagnosis. And diagnosis allows for intervention. Napoleon Hill spent 17 years documenting the difference between those who accumulate wealth and those who merely move it around. And what he found was surgically precise. It wasn't about how much they earned. It was about 5 microscopic behaviors operating without conscious supervision. Validation spending after a win, which neutralizes a gain before it can become a foundation. Financial anesthesia, which numbs short-term pain, and with it also shuts down course correction. Recurring emergency debt, which turns the calendar into a surprise and planning into crisis management. Financial comparison with others, which outsources the definition of prosperity and turns accumulation into a race with no finish line. And the postponement of investment decisions, which inverts the logic of wealth by waiting for what should be set aside first to be left over. These 5 habits are symptoms of a larger problem: inverted applied faith. When the mind directs creative energy to sustain scarcity, not abundance, and as long as this inversion is active, you can double your income and the final result won't change. Because the money that comes in meets a mental configuration programmed to move, not to retain. But inverted applied faith isn't character, it's programming. And programming can be rewritten, not with motivation, not with abstract willpower, with method, with intentional physical interruption, with system redesign. And the redesign begins with a single act. You identify the sign, you name the habit, and you decide on the interruption within the next 72 hours. You don't need to interrupt all 5 at once. You just need to interrupt 1. Because when you interrupt an invisible habit with concrete physical action, the entire system begins to crack. The mind realizes that you're not just thinking differently, you're acting differently. And action recalibrates belief with a speed that thought alone can never achieve. You are no longer someone who can't save money. You are someone who has identified 5 invisible mechanisms operating on autopilot. and decided to interrupt the first one within the next 72 hours. That's the difference between those who grow and those who circulate. Those who circulate wait for inspiration. Those who grow act before they feel like it. Those who circulate visualize change. Those who grow interrupt the habit before they have a complete strategy. Those who circulate wait for the right moment. Those who grow create the moment with a single, intentional physical act. And when you act, even if it's just a single sign interrupted, the mind receives the most powerful message there is. You are no longer negotiating with the pattern, you are destroying it. And pattern destruction doesn't require months. It requires a physical decision executed before emotional resistance has time to organize itself. Now go, grab the sheet, mark the signs, choose one, and decide on the interruption today. Because wealth isn't built with sporadic grand decisions. It's built with small, intentional interruptions, repeated until they become the new pattern. And the new pattern starts now.